Come on in, y'all, and join us. We got a show for you today. Come on in. We're back. It's another Monday, One Africa Worldview Podcast. You know what it is right here. So come on in and share, come on in. And there's so much going on today. We will be talking about it just how we do every week. So come on in, y'all. Come on in. All right. Let's see you coming on. That's what we like. Come on in into that chat. Share, tell everyone we're on. It's that time of the week. Come on in. We'll get started in just a bit. And you know how we do right here. One Africa Worldview Podcast every Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Come on in. Come on in. Let me see you in the chat. Uhuru. Come on in. All right, y'all stay tuned. We're about to get it started. Come on in. And just how we like to see that chat, running it up. Come on in. Every Monday. Uhuru. I'm Dr. Mariah, Promotions Coordinator for Black Power 96.3 FM radio based in St. Petersburg, Florida, but available worldwide, y'all, through the Black Power 96 mobile app. Our show airs on Black Power 96 radio every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, and my lovely co-hosts Akile and Ciliana are on the ground this week with other projects. So I'll be solo hosting this episode, but we'll be joined by special guest and friend of the show, Comrade Paolo, the Peruvian Chasqui, during our primary objective. And we have a fabulous show for y'all planned today, beginning with our Whirlwind Weekly update, where we'll be discussing our growing recognition of a Palestinian state and the lynchings in the United States that's happening, and the whole Charlie Kirk fallout that I'm sure that you're excited to get into. But for our primary objective, we're going to be discussing the escalating U.S. aggression against Latin America, and particularly in Venezuela there, as mentioned. And we'll be joined by Comrade Paolo, a Peruvian activist, human rights consultant, writer, journalist, organizer with the Hands Off Uhuru Fightback Coalition, and co-founder of the Los Ronderos de Los Redes. And he's going to break it all down for us right here. So the real reason why the U.S. is attacking Venezuela and what that's all about, and how Venezuela is gearing up to respond and defend. So for the culture segment this week, we'll be checking out Dead Prez's 25th anniversary celebration and getting into that. So yeah, we've got an action-packed show for you today. So let's get right into it, y'all. So yeah, in our Whirlwind Weekly update here, we're looking at these headlines, and I mean, they're everything is going on. And just first here, we're going to look at these lynchings, the lynchings that are happening over in Mississippi, the lynchings in California. And I mean, come on. So like I said, yeah, first up, we're saying that Mississippi is once again the site of African terror, y'all. And according to the Jackson Advocate in Cleveland, Mississippi, a 21-year-old African student, Demetravian Trey Reed, was found hanging from a tree right on the campus of Delta State University. And authorities have reportedly rushed to the rule of death of suicide. But for African people, the image of a young Black man hanging in a Mississippi tree, it cannot be separated from the long, bloody legacy of this lynching in the state. So families and community members, they're demanding justice and want answers, y'all, citing Mississippi's history of just covering this up over and over. And when it comes to Black death, that's always happening. And first, they're telling the family that, oh, the brother was found dead in the dorm room and then hanging from a tree. And that's a big difference, y'all. A tree right in the middle of the campus. So, yeah, we need answers when it comes to that. And whether labeled as suicide or not, these cases mirror the same colonial violence it's something that's plagued our people over and over now for centuries. And from these slave patrols of the 1800s to the nooses of Jim Crow, from the prison cells all the way to the police bullets that are happening today, these lynchings of African people it's never stopped, y'all. So yeah, we need answers. And just think about it. Mississippi once led the nation in recorded lynchings as having the highest amount. And today it continues to symbolize this deep wound of colonial domination. So these types of deaths are not just really isolated tragedies to only Mississippi, though, because we've seen an uptick in this just happening across the recent months across the country, like the other brother that was just found over in Oakland, California, same thing there. And this isn't just anything but part of an ongoing system that continuously devalues African life, y'all. And this isn't just some fluke of this colonial system by no means. This must be seen in context and many other instances of violence inflicted on African people. And this is no different. So in the wake of yet another lynching of an African man in Oakland, California on June 30th, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, a mass organization of white people working for reparations under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, released a statement. In it, USN says, the June 30th death must be seen in the context of rising white nationalist attacks and police cover-ups. In Albany, New York, in June, the family of Earl Smith believed he was lynched, while police ruled it a suicide. Other recent cases dismissed as suicides include Sanaya Cheatham in New York City, Denoris Richardson over in Alabama, and Javion McGee in North Carolina. So between the late 19th and mid-20th centuries, white mobs lynched thousands of African peoples in the U.S. And today, the state continues to cover up these lynchings under the same false label of what? Suicide, y'all. So decades of this state-sanctioned violence, white nationalist terror, the ongoing theft of African labor and resources that enriched the whole white world. And when it comes to that, it's everyday lynchings of African people maintain that colonial mode of production, y'all. And this is what we've actively been fighting against. And speaking of, it's just colonial violence over and over. We'll even get into our next headline here, which really shows the concerns about the colonial occupation of Palestine. So, and just the latest from on the ground over there in the conditions in Gaza, we can look and see that on September 16th, after heavy aerial bombardment of Gaza City, and reportedly after a communication from Marco Rubio, the legal occupation entity began its latest ground invasion of Gaza, and this time with an intent to encircle Gaza and conquer the Palestinians over there. So the illegal occupation entity added 130,000 troops for this purpose, y'all. 300,000 Palestinians, 40% of the population of the city were forced to flee northern Gaza to the south. And during this whole ground invasion, the occupation entity murdered over 108 Palestinians in less than 24 hours of the UN concluding that Israel's onslaught against Palestinians in Gaza constitutes a genocide. So, though the entity's troops are more numerous and armed with advanced weapons and funded by who? The United States, it has lost several troops and tanks already and near to the courageous efforts of the Palestinian resistance through the Palestinian resistance use of what? Tunnels ambushes, and close-range combat. So the occupation's leaders have enticed their soldiers with promises of a Gaza Riviera and claim it will come at little monetary cost. Yeah, right. But it would actually cost 20 to 25 million shekels annually, which they don't have this, y'all. And Palestinian resistance has also struck Allen Road, which connects the illegal settlements that are east of Ramallah. Reports of the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank near Ramallah and forces the occupation to focus on two fronts all at once there. So the Palestinian resistance has forced the occupation to withdraw from Yaban, southwest of Jenin, and it was also eliminated a collaborator with the occupation, y'all. So Washington plans to approve this $6 billion budget of weapons for Israel, in which reduces the U.S.'s own military capacity. Wow. So on the ground conditions we see for Palestinians, they haven't improved in any kind of really meaningful way. And just to make those matters worse, in no way, shape, or form, some Western states have become the talk of the town for recognizing Palestine as a state. So when it comes to that, in the past few days, the colonial states of Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia have all joined the list of countries that now recognize Palestine as a state. And this comes after generations of the murder and displacements of Palestinians, as well as the apartheid order that colored the day-to-day existence of Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So, as usual, people online have devolved into racist tirades at this ultimately symbolic gesture. And this is an empty gesture made even less in earnest, considering that it was made after the homes and livelihoods of the Palestinians have been reduced to what? Ashes. And after countless children have lost lives, limb after limb, after those that were lucky enough to even survive, but unlucky enough to leave, are now suffering from hunger and malnutrition, y'all. So all this is revealing that this is the West trying to save face again, going into crisis management mode as they always do. So we understand that the symbolic gesture, but I mean, that does not in any way get to the heart of the matter when it comes to anything. Because, I mean, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia recognizing Palestine as a state does not say anything about the settler colonial occupier that is Israel. And it does not come with a condemnation of the things Israel has done in the name of establishing and maintaining the whole Jewish state there on the backs and at the human and material expense of these Palestinian people. So it says nothing about the cessation of the active genocide of Palestinian people happening right before our eyes and on our TVs and on our phone screens. We're seeing this happen over and over. And it really says nothing about what the returning stolen land of the Palestinian people. So in the wake of these recognitions, the Israeli prime minister said, "I have a clear message to those leaders who recognize a Palestinian state after terrible massacre on October 7th. You are giving a huge reward to terror, and I have another message for you. It will not happen. A Palestinian state will not be established west of the Jordan River. For years, I have prevented the establishment of this terrorist state despite enormous pressures from both within and outside. We did this with determination, and we did it with political wisdom. Moreover, we have double Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path." So the West may have ruffled Benatu's feathers and made themselves look compassionate, but the reality is their decades of material support for a leader like him, whose active policy is a disappearance of the Palestinian people, has been told us all what we already knew and needed to know. And so we've mentioned this many, many, many times before. Colonialism, y'all, exists because of what? The ongoing attack on African and colonized peoples. And this is exactly what's happening. And this attack and violence can also be made a manifest in the attack on anti-colonial free speech of which the Uhuru movement now has firsthand experience, as you know. And so we'll get into that on September 18th. The Hands Off Uhuru anti-colonial free speech movement launched this campaign to seek the repeal of the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act and the General Conspiracy Statute. The campaign is titled "Down with FARA and Conspiracy Laws, Put the Colonial State on Trial." So, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela stated, the foreign agents and conspiracy laws are explicitly political laws created for the purpose of waging political attacks against whoever the U.S. government designates as their target, y'all. So, for information, you can visit handsoffyahoo.org, or you can watch the Hands Off Uhuru webinar on September 18th that aired on the Burning Spear TV YouTube channel. So at that webinar, it was revealed that the Uhuru 3 appeal of their bogus conspiracy conviction will be argued by a high-level prosecutor in the Department of Justice out of Washington, D.C. That's super important, y'all. This is an unusual move because where a district-level case would normally argued by a district-level prosecutor, 1 year ago, the Uhuru 3 were found out not guilty of serving as unregistered Russian agents, but were convicted. So, in the most logical and politically motivated charge of conspiring to serve as unregistered Russian agents. It's always Russian agents when it comes to it. So, stay tuned and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV YouTube channel to keep up with this important anti-colonial free speech appeal. So, yeah, and speaking of free speech, y'all, let's get right into this Charlie Kirk fallout because the circus has definitely come to town when it comes to these people. So first up, let's talk about Jimmy Kimmel. Fired, gone, out of here. Why? Because he dared to crack jokes about Kirk after this assassination, they're calling it, but it's a gunshot to me. But don't be fooled, y'all. This wasn't just ABC making these huge, tough decisions. No. Trump is straight up weaponizing the FCC to silence voices he doesn't like. Think all these Nixon vibes, y'all. Think about Nixon, but just on steroids when it comes to that. And even the FCC commissioner, Anna Gomez, said that this is a dangerous road for so-called democracy. So meanwhile, independent stations like Black Power 96, we're still here, holding the line, showing what it means to have real community media. And matter of fact, we just came back from the Grassroots Radio Coalition when we ain't backing down when it comes to this. And check this. Folks are canceling their Disney Plus and their Hulu memberships in protest of this actual Kimmel filing and firing. So reports can say that we've already noticed that the company's lost $4 billion in the market value. Wow. So that's what happens when corporations bend the knee to Trump's tantrums, y'all. So just looking at this, here's where it gets super ugly. And I mean, as if it can get uglier, here we go. Folks are actually being encouraged to call into people's jobs, report them, and get them fired just for what they say about Kirk online. And the same playbook, y'all, that we saw happening back when the KKK used during the civil rights movements. And I mean, they're just going to be here to intimidate, silence, and destroy livelihood. And the same thing, it's just a different century this time. And get this, even more to it. This young African student down in Texas and was actually arrested, y'all, for dancing around and voicing her opinion at one of these Kirk memorials. So dancing. Meanwhile, the whole political establishment is tripping over themselves to play respectability politics all of a sudden. And speaking of respectability, really a lack thereof, really. The funeral, this thing was a whole spectacle. Instead of this solemn reflection, as we know funerals normally are, it looked like this bad soap opera, really. You had Kirk's wife, child. She practically threw herself at Trump in front of everybody. Look at this. She was auditioning for a new role, it seems like. And the political pimp himself, he was right there waiting to collect his coins. Y'all, all that, it was just messy. Just straight reality TV energy on parade there. And some are saying, where's the Epstein files? But here's the real story, y'all. The fight back is rising. People see through this facade. They see the resistance is bubbling. The colonial empire is in decline, y'all. We say it all the time. And they're grasping at straws when it comes to this. And they're doing the most while they're trying. And they're blaming everyone. They're blaming indigenous so-called immigrants one day, transgender folks the next day, pointing out Black people, and even threatening the HBCUs when it comes to this. But when it all came out, the assassin was what? A white man from where? Utah, one of their own. And then what do we hear now? Silence. Nothing. Not a peep. So suddenly we forgive him is what this Kirk's wife is saying. And now you tell me, would we hear that same forgiveness extended if it was a brother or LGBT? We already know the answer when it comes to that. So let's be clear. This ain't about mourning for them, y'all. This is about power. It's always about power. It's about silencing the critics. It's about keeping folks in line. And as always, One Africa Worldview, we're going to call it out. We're going to call it what it is right here. And with no filter when it comes to that. So truth be told, not feeling no ways tired about anything or Charlie's ass either when it comes to it, honestly. So we sure brought these whirlwinds this week when it comes to all this, y'all. And I mean, you know, we're going to always keep it going when it comes to over here and keep it real. So let's take time now to switch gears and head right into our primary objective. So, yeah, today on our primary objective, we want to talk about what's escalating here in the U.S., the military and economic aggression against the progressive peoples and governments of Latin America. Our special guest today is Comrade Paolo, friend of the show, actually. And as mentioned, he's also a Peruvian activist, human rights consultant, writer, journalist, organizer with the Hands Off Uhuru Fightback Coalition, and co-founder of the Los Ronderos de las Redes, which means monitor of the media. It's an anti-colonial Peruvian collective that uplifts the indigenous struggle for social justice and self-determination in Peru and builds anti-imperialist solidarity in the United States for the sovereignty of Latin America and the Caribbean, y'all. So Paolo has traveled to Mexico, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, where he's witnessed the 2022 U.S.-backed coup in Peru, met the ousted leftist president and relatives of the victims of state repression there, and interviewed foreign diplomats and government officials on different occasions. So, wow, welcome, Comrade Paolo. Bring us up to speed on what's happening over in Latin America. Welcome to the show.
Uhuru, great to be on the show, and thank you for this great introduction. And so let's get to talking about Venezuela. We are at a critical moment regarding the situation with U.S. imperialism and colonialism. And so let's play the video we've got with President Nicolas Maduro, literally calling it colonialism.
Entonces, es un conjunto de cosas que son falsas todas. Son narrativas para justificar una escalada, pero el objetivo no es la lucha contra el narcotráfico. El objetivo es entrar y apoderarse de Venezuela, imponer autoridades coloniales en Venezuela y hacer un cambio de régimen en Venezuela.
Uhuru. Now, he's calling it as it is because we understand it through the 200 years of independence, fighting for independence in Venezuela, that against the Spanish Empire, we're facing the same enemy as it was back then. But for 532 years, it's been a longer struggle with the indigenous peoples fighting against colonialism. And so we're seeing the same enemy with the U.S. empire trying to be this octopus in the region all over with the U.S. Southcom and the Pentagon, CIA, all the forces against the sovereign countries. So I wanted to read a statement before we continue, a statement from the Venezuela Solidarity Network, from the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition, from the Sanctions Kill America's Without Sanctions organization. And so this is a condemnation regarding the aggression, the U.S. instigation of violence against Venezuela. And so we condemn the escalating U.S. attacks on Venezuela that have been ongoing since the Bolivarian Revolution began in 1998, including pressuring the country to bend to U.S. interests through the imposition of unilateral coercive measures, sanctions since 2015. These illegal measures are deliberately designed to cause inhumane suffering, to destabilize the country and compel regime change. It has always been clear that the sanctions on Venezuela are a ploy to gain access to the country's vast natural resources, including the world's largest oil reserves. So whilst the coercive measures imposed on Venezuela succeeded in causing over 100,000 excess deaths, the imperial objective of regime change was thwarted by President Nicolas Maduro in concert with the people of the country and in firm alliance with the military. President Trump has escalated the offensive by inventing the narco-terrorist myth, despite the fact that his own country is the world's largest consumer of illicit drugs, biggest launderer of drug money, and leading source of weaponry for the cartels. Trump slapped a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head, accusing him of directing the largely defunct Tren de Aragua gang and leading the fictitious Cartel de los Suns, or Cartel de los Soles, on only to justify sanctions, embargoes, and threats of military intervention, according to Pino Arlachi, former executive director of the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. So U.S. aggression is now shifting towards direct armed intervention with an armada of warships, F-35 stealth aircraft, and thousands of troops confrontationally deployed to the southern Caribbean to increase pressure on Venezuela. The presence of so much U.S. military might close to a country the U.S. has erroneously labeled an enemy constitutes a powder keg that could be ignited at any moment under false pretenses. We have already seen the premeditated murder by U.S. forces of the crew in a small boat off the coast of Venezuela, and cannot rule out attempts to assassinate the country's leader, as the U.S. and its partner Israel have ghoulishly done in West Asia. We demand an end to this impunity. A majority of regional governments and some 80 countries around the world have decried the U.S. military threats to Venezuela. Any injury to Venezuela will threaten the peace and stability of the entire region. Particularly Cuba and Nicaragua, the other heavily sanctioned and independent countries that are demonized by the U.S. administration. We demand an end to U.S. hybrid warfare, the misinformation campaigns, and sanctions imposed over the past 2 decades, and a stop to this armed aggression. Venezuela is a beacon of hope for the people of the Americas and the world. We demand that the Venezuelan people be allowed to live in peace according to the form of government they have chosen. The U.S. hands off of Venezuela, no coups, no sanctions, and no wars. So let's continue to the next slide. We have an image, regional map. It is showing the lengths of the U.S. Forces by Navy, by air, and by troops capacity here. They have stationed the troops in Puerto Rico, occupied it over there, and as well as near the Panama Canal. As we have seen that from the beginning of this year, when Trump came into office, and Trump's main focus was on Latin America. Is the beginning focus to ascertain the Panama Canal. He wanted Greenland, Canada, but it extends more. It's this ancient over 200 years of manifest destiny, and they essentially still think the same way. It's this same obsolete colonial state that oppresses us to this day, and so they have these nuclear-powered submarines too, threatening this zone of peace, historically known for a zone of peace, because our region has faced so many conflicts, internal armed conflicts, coups, assassination of our presidential candidates, presidents, people on the left, people who lead campesinos, indigenous movements, environmental defenders, of course, all threatened with their lives, because this is a region that has previously seen genocide. We have our own. We had our own Hitlers. We had our own Netanyahus, and most of these leaders were white in the first place. So they migrated to Latin America and sent to the same oppression. U.S. trained forces, anti-communist death squads all over, and they had in Panama the schools of the Americas, and so that's why Panama is still crucial for the U.S. Imperialists. When we had the U.S. Southcom General Laura Richardson under Biden, she was going all over to manipulate the politics of each country there and ascertain agreements with the far right to make military partnerships, joint military exercises in the future, and still ongoing. And the influence in Guyana, neighboring to Venezuela to the east, via Essequibo, to make a internal a territorial dispute over that, and so they wanted to split or balkanize Venezuela's sovereignty through these strategies, all sorts of clandestine operations. Even when Trump was in office in his first term, they had their own Bay of Piglets. So there's been just constant attempts to overthrow not only Venezuela, but Cuba and Nicaragua. We've seen different forms of insurrections against the revolutionary governments that are actually providing the social programs that the people need, except when the United States does not, and they have an overloaded military budget. So let's get to the next slide. So with this regarding the narco trafficking myth or the narco-terrorist myth, we have to understand that Venezuela is capable of just completely destroying the drug trafficking methods that is trying to get into the country are being created there. And so there is when President Trump bombed the first boat, which killed 11 innocent fishermen, they were President Maduro sent a letter to Trump to get him through diplomatic channels, but Trump is not convinced by data and facts. But the rest of the public are. We are. We're not as stupid as the president of the United States, because he's driven by ego. He's driven by revenge, essentially. He's going all out against the migrants, against Venezuela. He had to. He took the measure to put 252 Venezuelan migrants into a concentration camp, in being tortured in El Salvador, in a penal colony for the U.S. empire. And so Maduro sent a letter giving him facts about that this is a myth, this is a lie, that Trinidad does not exist anymore, that Cartel de los Soles is not even real. And we have this article here from Telesur showing how the Venezuelan government neutralized the 402 drug trafficking aircrafts, but also by sea through the Colombian border. And so why is the main focus over Venezuela for the U.S. empire when the drug trade is actually coming through the Pacific Ocean, through my home country, Peru, through Colombia? This is the major Amazon region that is less stabilized, doesn't have that much authority, presence for each respective government. And so the Venezuelan government is seeing this, that only 5%, or so from the 2023 and 2024 World Drug Report data from the United Nations, it shows that only 5% of the drug trade goes through through Venezuela. and so it's mainly from the Pacific Ocean, 87% through Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, and 8% to go north from Colombia to in the U.S., to North America, to Canada, and Mexico. And so why are they focusing on this tiny percentage? It's the least amount, 5% of the drug trade that passes through. Venezuela is a so-called transit country. They're not the ones that have insecure borders or have a destabilized government. They can manage the to neutralize the drug traffickers in their country, in the borders. But Peru and Colombia cannot. Neither can Ecuador at this moment, because of organized crime is much heavily present. And so with that focus, it's really about the oil, the natural resources, as the statement that I read was claiming about. And let's get to the next image. Yeah, so this is the graph that shows how the drug trade goes to the darker shaded ones are Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, where the cocaine is focused on. Cocaine is produced, and cocaine comes from the coca leaf that is grown in the Andes and also in the Amazon, and in traditional cultures of the Andes, they consume it, but not in the form of cocaine. But it's used to make cocaine, but it's not the same. It's just a leaf on its own. But yeah, the cocaine, of course, we know the history of Pablo Escobar in Colombia, Scarface, a fictitious character in Bolivia. We had literal narco presidents in the past that were right wing, that they were vendepatrias, comprador governments that were repressing the people who sought justice for their own victims of the state of repression in the 20th century. And these vendepatria governments, narco presidents, were U.S. allied. They had their own training with the School of the Americas. And they were, just part of the drug trade, fostering that. For example, in Nicaragua, when the Sandinista revolution was occurring in 1970s and 1980s, the anti-communist death squad, the Contras and the Contra-revolutionaries, were trying to. They were producing these the drug to get to transfer to Los Angeles, to the streets of our barrios, our hoods, our compatriots that are suffering to this day. Africans, Latinos, even white people, but it's mainly the who got impacted were the Africans and Latinos, indigenous people that were imprisoned, part of this mass private prison scheme, the prison industrial complex under Reagan, under these presidents in the past, Bush and then Clinton and so forth. That's all from the U.S. policy. Ironically, from the president himself, that is say no to drugs, Ronald Reagan, and so it's all just you cannot believe whether the Republican or Democrat, you cannot believe their statements on combating drugs, on all this, because they were fostering this the drug trade, and they were making money off this, so they could part of the Iran-Contra scandal under Reagan. And so that's the whole irony, and we have to remember, because it's still, as I said, the same colonial system that is playing the same games to this generation. We have to know our history. So, next slide. So here we have the Venezuelan Interior Minister, I believe it's General Padrino Lopez, accusing the far right of plotting false flag operations to provoke a U.S. clash. So a form of a Gulf of Tonkin to give a reason for the U.S. to invade. And this was an article from the first instance that the U.S. Did that violence on September 2nd. So this is on the 9th of September. And so there's the right wing, the Venta Patrias in Venezuela are just the same as the Cubans living in Miami, who are wealthier. They are upset, of course, with the Chavez government and the Maduro government right now, for leading the people through providing social programs for the masses, and so these anti-revolutionary Venezuelans have tried to oust the leader. They tried to put up their own Juan Guaido, their Edmundo Gonzalez figures, and claiming that they're the president or they won the election, even though it was completely false regarding that. And so even Edmundo Gonzalez, he was doing a world tour to Europe, to the U.S., and to Latin America. He was in Peru when I was over there at the time, and so they were just doing these world tours and claiming and just getting this building that alliance, an international right-wing alliance. And so the Venezuelan opposition to the Bolivarian Revolution are Zionists as well. They don't stand with the people who were kidnapped and tortured and imprisoned, human trafficked, literally, in El Salvador. These 252 Venezuelans were freed because of the efforts of President Maduro through a prisoner exchange for 6 or so U.S. mercenaries that attempted to do a coup or terrorist attacks against Venezuela on their sovereignty. And so this is the big fault of the right, that they don't support their own people, essentially, when they're in the United States and trapped. Migrants are in limbo because of in fear of the ICE forced disappearance. And so the second article here is Ecuador President Daniel Noboa. And he himself, I want to get to that point, is that he himself is born in Miami. He is a U.S. puppet at president, and he, his own children as well. He made sure that they would be born on U.S. soil, and so he ran for president after the previous president, who was also a billionaire. This guy Noboa is also a billionaire, a capitalist. The owner of his family's banana company, so literally a banana republic. His company is known for trafficking drugs, trafficking cocaine all the way to Albania, where the Albania mafia does these deals with the Ecuadorian organized crime there. And so this is the Ecuadorian government right now, a dictatorship that is trying to impose a reform on the Rafael Correa constitution. When President Rafael Correa was president, he was on the left. He was essentially what the right wing is doing right now is trying to get rid of the amendment in the Constitution, or so, that is that would allow now for U.S. troops to have even a military base in Ecuador. So Eric Prince from Blackwater, now newly reformed as Academia, with the mercenaries, are trying to advise the Ecuadorian government. So the U.S. imperialists have a close ear to the president of Noboa, managing things internally. For neoliberalism to function for the rich over there, and so Noboa is a literal narco president, but nobody's talking about it. And the President Trump is not going to go after him because he's a U.S. ally, he's a U.S. puppet, he's a comforter, he's a venda patria. He's working in favor of the international right wing of the U.S. interests to undermine the sovereignty of Ecuador. So that's what they're trying to do right now. That's why there's protests right now in a national strike in Ecuador, because the people are seeing what it is with the failure of neoliberalism, and they don't want to use troops in Ecuador right now. So Ecuador here, it says that they ended the migration statute protecting Venezuelan citizens. So it's not only the U.S. government going after Venezuelans, but it's also the right wing across the board in Latin America that are trying to deport the Venezuelans who were forced to leave Venezuela in the first place. They were displaced because of these sanctions that, as the statement I read, killed at least 100,000 excessive deaths there because of sanctions and this hybrid warfare. And we don't even call it a war, but it's a hybrid warfare that the U.S. has been waging on since Chavez was in power, and so that's one of the examples of the right wing working in collusion with the U.S. government. We can go to the next slide. So this image reminds me of the Sandinista revolution. This is a imagery called from Venezuela's Independence 200 plan, where they are leading a civic military training, an alliance for a partnership for the civilian population to be trained in preparation for a possible U.S. invasion, as we're already at that point. And it's really just shocking that we got to this point, but the people in Venezuela are prepared. They're getting ready through training. They're prepared to defend their country essentially, and they're not afraid they know what's at stake. It's their own sovereignty, their own legacy of Chavez, of Maduro, of Simon Bolivar from the founding of the country. They are prepared to do what it takes to defend their own home country. So Venezuelan armed forces launch defense exercises as Trump's illegal strikes face domestic criticism. So at the same time, 60% of U.S. citizens disagree with Trump's foreign policy when it comes to Venezuela. They don't want a war with Venezuela. They didn't ask for this. This was a so-called peace president. This was absolute lie. You cannot trust the presidential candidates during their presidential campaigns. And so
you can't trust them. You're so right. Comrade Paolo, this is so powerful. This is so powerful. But with the time that we do have left here with this segment, I do want to ask you a question. We hear about the Fightback coalition and how Hands Off Uhuru is launching the Latin America Committee to build that international anti-colonial free speech campaign. And just before you go here, and it's so powerful, like I said, we definitely want to have you back again in the future so we can continue this discussion here. But before you go here in our last few minutes of the segment, can you let our people know and our listeners and viewers know how can they support the struggle, and what does that Latin division opening there, what does that mean? Can you speak to that, please?
Well, we're seeing all this with the FARA, with the actual recall. Trump is trying to go after Code Pink anti-war activists when they confronted it when he was having dinner in D.C. This, as well as going after Palestinian activists too. This is all fronts, including migrants. And so we're here to defend the anti-colonial free speech and defend the sovereignty of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, and all the countries that are fighting, resisting against these neoliberal, these comprador colonial governments. And so this is an image. We were at the border of Tijuana and San Diego in California. And so here, from my own footage gathering there, the National Guard with the protests of Chicanos in Santa Ana, California. We have been everywhere, and so we're still gaining that support internationally as well. As I've been traveling, meeting the Afro-Nicaraguan, Afro-Bolivian, Afro-Peruvian communities, and so many more, to build this alliance and build the African People's Socialist Party as an international party in the Latin American hemisphere, and connecting the struggles to Haiti, another occupied country, for U.S. and UN intervention, with the support of comprador governments like Kenya as well. And so we call out for U.S. hands off Latin America and the Caribbean for all over. And so we launched the Latin American Front, and we're having our first committee meeting on Saturday, October 11th, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And this is you can register on Zoom, handsoff.uhuru.org/Latin America.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Comrade Paolo. This has been so powerful. Thank you for coming and letting our viewers and listeners know what's going on with this. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep this conversation going. So we have to have you back on the show in the near future so we can continue this discussion. Thank you so much there. And just this whole historical and present context around how the U.S. aggression and Latin America, I mean, it's just so much going on there. And, it's so much more that we can talk about. So, thank you so much for that powerful discussion there. And yeah, we just continue to see this evidence, as you mentioned there, of this colonialism being a mode of production, y'all. And what's encouraging is the response that we see the people and leaders like Nicolas Maduro, victory to the people of Latin America, y'all. And from the sea to shining, indigenous land will be free. Uhuru, y'all. So, yeah. So moving on, we'll go ahead and get into our further culture segment here. And this year marks the 25th anniversary of the release of hip-hop group Dead Prez's groundbreaking album, Let's Get Free. And released in 2000, as Complex reports, the record shook the music industry with its unapologetic politics, a real fierce critique of the U.S. society and commitment to the liberation of African people worldwide, y'all. So 2.5 decades later, here we are, and Dead Prez is taking their message back to the people with a global anniversary celebration that honors both the music and the movement behind that music. And the influence of Chairman Omali Yeshitela's theory of African internationalism is apparent throughout this album, especially in the two songs that has sampled his speeches. So, and those songs are Wolves and Police State. So they carried forward the speeches and analysis of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, founder and leader of the African People's Socialist Party. So through these tracks, Dead Prez's amplified the theory of African internationalism, exposing the colonial conditions that African people face and provide a cultural weapon to inspire this resistance, y'all. So one of the talented members of the duo that comprises the group is M1, who had actually been an active organizer within the Uhuru movement prior to the production of the album. So for many of our viewers and listeners, the Dead Prez served as a bridge between the beats of hip-hop and the politics of the liberation. So their music translated complex ideas of colonialism, self-determination, and resistance into anthems that could be played in clubs, y'all, cars, headphones, all across the globe there. And it's bigger than hip-hop. And that wasn't just this hook, y'all. It was actually a world view. So the Wolf song on the album is a long sample of Chairman Omali's speech entitled The Wolf and the Double-Edged Blade, delivered on May 31st, 1998 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So the entire text of Chairman's speech can be found in his book, Omaili Yeshitela Speaks, published by Burning Spear Media. So.
And now they put the crack cocaine in our community, and it demoralized the African workers and poor people who are the heartbeat of the revolution. Let me tell you that's where the revolution is. And when they did this to the young African workers and poor people, then we saw all these other so-called Negro leaders who would come up attacking the community. The problem was the community. We need to atone. We need this and that. It wasn't that the government was the problem. It was the people who were the problem. And so we had to struggle against this concept that was out there, even among the African working class itself. Because what we found is that the people who were out pushing crack cocaine often thought it was their idea that they were doing it. They thought, I'm out here doing this because this is my idea, but it wasn't their idea. What the imperialists, the capitalists, what white power had done was take away all the other options and say, if you want to live, this is what you can do to live on, and put crack cocaine there. I'm not a hunter, but I'm told that in places like in the Arctic, where indigenous people sometimes might hunt a wolf, they'll take a double-edged blade and they'll put blood on the blade and they'll melt the ice and stick the handle in the ice so that only the blade is protruding, and that a wolf will smell the blood and wants to eat, and it'll come and lick the blade trying to eat. And what happens is when the wolf licks the blade, of course, he cuts his tongue and he bleeds, and he thinks he's really having a good meal. He drinks and he licks, and of course he's drinking his own blood and he kills himself. That's what the imperialists did to us with crack cocaine. You got these young brothers out there thinking that they're getting something that they're gonna make a living with. They're getting something they can buy a car like the white people have cars. Why can't I have a car? They're getting something that they can get a piece of gold. The white people have gold. Why can't I have gold? They're getting something to get a house. The white people have a house. Why can't I have a house? And they actually think that it's something that's bringing resources to them, but they're killing themselves just like the wolf who's licking the blade, and they're slowly dying without knowing. That's what's happening to the community. You with me on that? That's exactly and precisely what happens to the community. And instead of blaming the hunter who put the damn handle and the blade in the ice for the wolf, that what happens is the wolf gets blamed for trying to live. That's what happens in our community. You don't blame the person, the victim, you blame the oppressor. Imperialism, white power is the enemy. Was the enemy when it first came to Africa, snatched up the first African, brought us here against our will, is the enemy today. That's the thing that we have to understand.
Wow, wow, wow. Don't blame them for trying to live. That is so powerful. So, yeah, we're seeing that now, y'all. 25 years later, this anniversary is more than just nostalgia. It is a reminder that the struggles at Dead Prez rhymed and remain urgent when it comes here. And the same stuff that we're seeing, this on the police violence, the mass incarceration, and economic inequality still define the reality for millions of African people. And they're returning to the stage here on this anniversary tour. And Des Prez is reigniting that revolutionary spark, reconnecting new generations to the fire that made Let's Get Free a classic, y'all. And you can see that tour and that schedule there, and just so powerful here. And that anniversary stands as both celebration, y'all, and a call to action. And it's a testament to the enduring power of African music rooted in the struggle. So yeah, that wraps up this week's For the Culture segment, y'all. And I want to stay locked in right here for our announcements coming up next. All right, so yeah, if you're interested in getting connected with the Uhuru movement, y'all, by way of joining, supporting, or volunteering, here are some upcoming events that you can tap into. So on Wednesday, September 24th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, you can join the African People's Solidarity Committee for their September event. The APSC will discuss how colonialism poisons, pollutes, and destroys the earth, but how white people can be part of building a positive future through reparations, working under the leadership of the African Revolution. You can register for this at apscuhuru.org/register. That's apscuhuru.org/Uhuru, y'all. And so Y'all, for more events and everything else we got going on, you can visit theburningspear.com/events. And of course, we'll be keeping you updated right here on One Africa Worldview. So make sure you're subscribed, you're locked in, and all of our socials, and you are sharing it and keeping the word, because you know we will be talking about it over here. So yeah, y'all, that is it for today's show. It went by just like that. Told you we had a fabulous one for you. It was action-packed as promised, and thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get notifications for when we're live, y'all. And we stream on the Burning Spear TV YouTube. We're streaming on Burning Spear Media Rumble channels, and now on Black Power 96.3 FM radio based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and streaming worldwide on the Black Power 96 FM app, y'all. So until next week, how we say, One Africa, One Nation.